For this crochet version of this cute ear warmer or just simple head wrap, I also used the wool worsted, which I used for the Tunisian and the knit version as well. And this is an upcycle reserve wool worsted from We Crochet. I really like this yarn. I thought it was really fun for this. And being a wool, if you did want to wear this in the winter, it will help keep your head a little bit warmer. So stylish and warm, which is super fun. To get started with this project, you will need a crochet hook. I'm using a G hook by Furls. This is their Streamline Wood. Then I also have a pair of scissors, an O-ring, or commonly known as a teething ring. I know we're going to use this for ourselves. You can pick that up at pretty much any craft store or on Amazon. And then also some tapestry needles to weave in those ends when we are ready. I also find it helpful when I'm learning a new stitch or creating a new stitch to grab some stitch markers to understand and keep track of how many stitches are in each row. It's just super helpful. So to get started, we're going to leave a long tail for stitching to the ring later. We don't have to worry too much about it right now. We're just going to leave a tail knowing that we need it to sew later onto this ring. We're going to go ahead and tie a slip knot and place that onto our hook. And now I'm going to chain 17. This stitch pattern can be worked in multiples of 2, but when you're working your foundation chain, you also want to chain 1 extra so that you have that turning chain. Okay, now that I have 17 chains, I'm going to go ahead and work my first row. So in the second chain from the hook, I am going to do a single crochet. Now in the next stitch, we are going to do a stacked single crochet. The way we do a stacked single crochet is we create a single crochet like we normally would, but then if you notice, there is a left leg to a single crochet when we're looking at the front of the stitch. At the front of the stitch, there is a V, and we will be working our hook back through the left leg of that V. So we will insert our hook back into that single crochet in that left leg, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both of the loops on the hook. And that is a stacked single crochet. Now we will skip the next stitch and do a stacked single crochet into the next. So you do a single crochet like normal, insert your hook into that left leg, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over and pull through both loops on the hook. Just want to make a quick note. I forgot to throw in my stitch marker, but I want you to because I think it's really helpful. So in that very first single crochet, let's go ahead and throw in a stitch marker. Now we will keep going. We will skip our next stitch and then we are going to do a stack single crochet. So we're going to work that across doing the stack single crochet and skipping a stitch until we get to the very last stitch in the row. So skip one, stack single crochet, skip one and stack single crochet. And then skip one, stack single crochet, I normally use a stack single crochet in the beginning of a row instead of using a half double crochet instead of chaining. A lot of times I use a stacked single crochet at the beginning of my rows. However, for this, we're using it in a stitch pattern. So that's why I think it's important to use the stitch markers, which I still do when I use it at the beginning of the row. But I have a blog post about substituting your chains for a stack single crochet. So I would check it out. I really enjoy doing that method and you might too. Now that I have done a stack single crochet and skipping one all the way across, I have one stitch left and we are going to single crochet into that stitch. Now I want to show you how to count your stitches because we should still have 16 stitches here. But a lot of our stack single crochets count as 2 stitches, but when we look at it from the top, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. So this is a single crochet And then if you notice the next 2 stitches we're looking at, that's a stacked single. So we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. So we just want to make sure that we're staying on track with our stitch counts, which we are. So every single stack single crochet counts as 2 stitches when you look at them from the top. For row 2, we are going to turn, and we are going to do a turning chain working these stack singles because of the way that they are worked. So our very first stitch will be a stacked single crochet. And because these stitches can be a little bit difficult to read, this counts as 2. Our very first stitch in the row counts as 2 stitches, as we see from the top. So we want to be sure to mark the very first stitch in this row. And that way when we're working back, we're less likely to lose track. Now we're going to skip the next stitch and do a stacked single crochet. Skip the next stitch and do a stacked single crochet. Same thing working across. We're just going to keep doing the stacked single crochets and skipping a stitch. Now when we get to the end of this row, I've done a stacked single crochet. I'm going to skip the next, but I will single crochet in the last 2. So I'm going to end row 2 by single crocheting in the last 2. I'm going to move this stitch marker so I can single crochet into that last stitch. And that's row 2. Now we will turn and work row 3. For row 3, we will chain 1 and single crochet into the first. Then go ahead and place that stitch marker. Now we are going to do a stacked single crochet into the next stitch and then skip 1. Stack single crochet and skip 1. We'll repeat that all the way across until our very last stitch. Now the stack single crochet, skip 1, and we will single crochet into the last. And I'll be happy to report that row 2 and row 3 are the repeats. So for the rest of this, we are simply repeating row 2 and row 3. I'm going to walk you through that briefly one more time, just so we can be sure that we've got this down. So I will turn, and for row 4, man, I'm tired. For row 4, it's a repeat of row 2. So we will chain 1, and then we're going to do a stacked single crochet in the very first. And I know if you are like me, it's good to keep track. I'm going to go ahead and mark that first stitch. That way, for when I'm tired, I won't lose my place. Skip the next and stack single crochet. So just keep working my stacked single crochets and skipping 1 all the way across until we get to the last 2 stitches in the row. Okay, so I've done a stacked single crochet. I'm skipping this stitch, and then I'm going to single crochet into the last 2. So that's the end of row 4, which is a repeat of row 2. And now we're going to turn and go to row 5, which is a repeat of row 3. So I will turn and chain 1 and then single crochet into the first, and I'm still going to go ahead and keep marking these edge stitches. Now I will stack single crochet into the next stitch and then skip 1. Stack single crochet and then skip 1. We're going to work that all the way across until we get to our last stitch. Now I'm going to be honest with you here. I don't even know if this is a stitch pattern that I've seen before. I have no idea. I was playing around tonight and I wanted to do a crochet fabric that wasn't too dense, that has some stretch, because I had just completed the Tunisian and the knit ear warmers, and I wanted this to have a similar fabric in the weight and the stretch and the density. And so I was just playing around and came up with this. I'm not sure if it is even in existence, but the one thing I've learned about crochet, and this is something I really want to get across to you as well, is that sometimes in crochet, if we are constantly only seeking and searching for directions that exist, we aren't being creative with ourselves, and also we're not adjusting for our needs. So I will say that I've come up with some cool things in the time I've crocheted, and I've always thought, oh my gosh, is that right? And then I realized there's no right or wrong. It's really about just discovering your passion with crochet. So is this in a stitch book? Who knows? But this is what we're going to learn, because this is what worked for me tonight. I don't even know what to call it yet. I'm tempted to call it the Honeycomb Stitch, just because that's what the other headbands are, but we'll see. Maybe you can help me name this one. So I'm skipping and I'm doing my last stacked single crochet, and then I'm going to skip my, oh, got a little snag there, and then I'm going to skip this stitch and then do a single crochet into the last, and that is the end of row 5, which is a repeat of row 3. So we'll just keep repeating row 2 and row 3 to get this wonderful stitch pattern that I'm digging tonight. And then we are going to create this until the length is approximately 20 inches for adults, and I'll have the other measurement sizes on my blog. Now, I will probably tell you the row count, because I can obviously do that with knowing the gauge, but I also think it's important, if you just want to relax and crochet, to not stress too much. It's really more about the width of this that you want around your head versus the length, because we can always add or subtract length once we get there, which is why I say it's nice to just have a tape measure, and that way you just keep crocheting until you reach approximately 20 inches. Or measure your head, and we want to go about an inch under your head circumference, because we want a little bit of stretch. So keep on working on this, and we'll come back once I have my length worked out. So once you have the amount of rows you need, and you can always try this on around your head, and if it touches, you're done, because you want it to have a little bit of space for stretch, because you want it to fit tight, so you don't want it to be too loose. So if the ends touch together and it feels comfortable, that's perfect, because we will also be placing it onto this ring, so that also accounts for some of that stretch. So I've done it to where I need it, and I do find it's best for these type of designs to go by measurements versus rows, just because we want the correct fit. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten this off, leaving a tail again, so that I can sew it to this ring. And let me show you how I go about doing that. So fold your head wrap in and then place your ring. So we're going to be sewing our ends to each side of this ring. I'm going to start with the first end. It really doesn't matter which end you choose to do first. It's just each side will be sewn through that ring. So I will take one side, put my needle through, and I'm just going to press it through this ring, folding it over like so. And then I'm just simply going to stitch this around. The nice thing is we've used texture stitches, so it will really hide your seam, because the texture stitches are so great at doing that. And so you simply just stitch around this ring, and then we'll do the same to the other side. And now that I've got the first side done, I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the other side. And I'm just simply going to stitch it around the ring. I can kind of push this around so I have more space here to push this side through and then turn it around and stitch it. So after stitching it, we just weave in our ends. And now that I've weaved in my ends, I can stretch this out again if I want to. If you want some of the wood to show, I prefer to show just a little bit. And then there is the headband. I hope you enjoy this. This can be worn as an ear warmer where this is a wool yarn, or it can just be worn for style. You can substitute with other yarns. I think it's a really fun pattern, quick, easy, great for gifts. And I hope you join me again soon for more projects.